calling.
Okay, I call.
Hey guys, welcome back to the vlog. We're going to be playing over at Capital Casino in their 1-3 game where you're going to buy in for $500. This first half of the vlog is going to be about one session I had that was kind of unique. I sat down at the table. It looked like a fairly weak table and no one really had any deep stacks. And I was chatting with a friend of mine who just busted out of the tournament, and a story came up where I told him that I once final tabled the tournament without looking at my cards, and I thought that was be an interesting experiment to have in a cash game. Of course, in a cash game, that's going to be very, very dangerous. It's not quite tournament style. There's a lot of, push and folds in tournaments. But I did decide to do a very aggressive pre-flop, which means when I raise pre-flop, if someone 3-bet me, I would either 4-bet or fold. If someone opened, I would either 3-bet or fold. There was no calling pre-flop. It was always putting in more chips. So the second half of the vlog is going to be more like a regular kind of stuff. I'll show you the highlights and lowlights from the rest of the week, and I hope you enjoy it. So sit back, relax, enjoy. Here it comes. I did miss the very first hand of the session. I had my camera set for photos and I thought I was recording and I wasn't. Anyway, I had pocket queens and I lost to a person with ace deuce offsuit. It cost me $100. This is the second hand. There were a couple limpers. A player raises to $15. I get a call from the player towards my right. I got queen jack suited. I decided this is going to be one of those 3-bet or fold hands, and I ended up 3-betting it to $60. I do get 2 calls, one from the original raiser and one from the caller on the button. So we're going to end up going 3 ways to this flop. And we got $192 in the center, and we're out of position with queen jack suited. Well, the flop comes out, and it's pretty good for my hand. It comes queen 10-4 with one of my suits. So I got top pair, decent kicker. I'm not going to be slowing down. I'm going to be just putting out $100, see what my opponents do. And it doesn't look like they have very much because they both end up folding. So we make a little extra money and we're happy. All right, I got ace jack offsuit under the gun, open for $15. I get a quick call from the player on my left. And then the next player, who has a fairly short stack of $27, jams all in for his $27. What's amazing about this is exactly the right amount to reopen the betting for me. The player at the end of the table calls the $27, and when it comes back to me, it's a $12 raise, but of course I'm not going to be calling. This is an excellent opportunity to 4-bet, and of course, the main reason I'm doing this is to isolate the player that's all in and collect all that dead money that's out there. I get pretty good odds. Even if he has a better hand than me, I like my chances with the pot odds. So everyone else folds out, and it's just going to be him and me going to the flop. He asked if I have a pair. I said no. He goes, oh, we probably have the same hand. And I go, well, I don't think so. I think you are way ahead. And so we go see a flop. He turns over his ace king as we see the flop of 4-4 deuce. I got some chop outs here and a jack to win it. Turn is a queen, river is a king, and we lose. Well, we got 2 limpers in here and we're in the small blind with pocket jacks. Raised to $25. Only one of the limpers puts in the call. And so we're going heads up to the flop with 59 in. Flop is not really great for my particular hand, but it's decent for my range. Comes ace, ace, queen. I check it here fairly quickly. I do have a backdoor flush draw, but the reason I checked is because I would sometimes check a big hand like an ace And if I did have an ace, I would probably lead small here on the turn, trying to suck him in. And we end up getting a very quick fold. All right, we have a $6 straddle on this hand, and 3 people call the $6. I got Jack 10 suited in the big blind. I'm going to be putting in a pretty good size squeeze here to $50. There's a lot of dead money out there, $24, so I might as well go after it. It does get folded around to the player in the small blind, who also ends up folding. So it's not an exciting hand, but this is a type of hand where sometimes I would just flat and not put in a big raise just to see a flop, because I have a pretty good drawing type hand. But today I'm being a little bit more aggressive. So we raised it, we win with it. On to the next hand. Well, 10-9 suited is a little bit on the bottom end of my range in this position, but I opened with it. I've been fairly quiet. I should be getting a lot of respect by now. End up getting a couple callers, and we're going to be headed off to a flop 4 ways with $60 in the center. Flop comes out, well, 10 high with 1 spade. So I got a backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, and top pair with a so-so kicker. I'm going to be leading at this for $35. My opponent shoves all in for his remaining stack. It's not very much. I have to throw in an extra $10 after everybody folds. And that seems like a very fair price for a hand as strong as mine. Turn card is the 8 of hearts. River card comes as a king of diamonds. My opponent shows ace 10 of clubs. And he wins that one. All right, one player limps in for $3. I got pocket jacks. I raised to $20. Even though there's a $25 chip out there, I only made it to $20. Everybody folds, and we're going to collect $7 whole for our efforts. Woohoo! Again, after one player limps in, I raise to $20, not like the $25 that's out there. Sorry for all the confusion if this upsets you. I end up getting 2 callers for the $20, so we're going to go 3 ways to a flop with $66 in the center. Well, the flop comes out 10-4 deuce rainbow. Now, naturally, this is not a very good flop for King Queen, but then again, I've been playing a very aggressive and tight style, and people are giving me a little bit more respect. I end up betting out for half-size pot of $30, and both players quickly fold, and we win this one with King High. All right, we get pocket tens from under the gun, open for $15. End up getting 3 callers for the $15. So we're going to be going 4 ways to a flop with $65 in the center. The reason there's an extra dollar in there is someone posted. So here we go. Flop comes out the beautiful, spectacular ace 9-7. 2 spades. I don't have a spade in my hand. I don't have an ace. I don't have any 9s or 7s. Not a good flop for pocket 10s. Player at the end of the table puts out a bet for $25. Another player shoves the rest of their chips in. Very short stack. And I just end up folding my hand. On to the next one. Well, here we have 2 limpers in front of us, and we have pocket jacks. That's a good hand to raise with. I make it $20, and everybody folds. Not too long after that hand, I look down at pocket aces from middle position. Well, I'm catching a lot of cards, and I'm catching them in the game that's playing small. It's kind of frustrating, but we're going to keep with the method. I raise to $15. I get a few callers for the $15. And we're going to go off to a flop. Well, the flop comes out 8-7-3 with 2 spades. Not a very good flop for my particular raising range. So I'm going to check the flop, see what the other players want to do. Player on my direct left makes it $21 and gets a very quick call from another player. And the third player also calls, and I got 2 aces with the ace of spades. But any card, jack or lower, is going to make a possible straight, flush, maybe full house. Anyway, Against 3 opponents, I'm going to have to narrow the field. I'm trying to think of a perfect size. If I put in a call, it'd be about 150 bucks, and then I'll raise about 100 more. So that's what I do. I make it $100 more to go. Hopefully this will eliminate some of the gut shots, maybe some of the weaker pairs, like some maybe has something like 7-6 and has some sort of backdoor draw with their second pair. I don't want to be up against 3 opponents with my 1 pair type of hand. Anyway, after some time, all my opponents decide to let it go. The last opponent in the 1 seat thought for a very long time. It looked like he was going to either make a move with his pair. I don't know what he was putting myself on, but eventually he does decide to make the fold, and we win another small pot. The very next hand, we pick up pocket aces again. Oh, why couldn't this happen in an action game instead of this particular one? I opened for $15, end up getting 2 callers. See a flop that comes queen high, very wet board for draws. I'm going to have to go ahead and fire at this, so I make it $25. I only get 1 caller from the player at the end of the table who has a pretty deep stack. Turn card comes as a deuce of diamonds. I decided that I'm going to be making a kind of a larger bet. He has been playing a lot of hands at this time. Don't really want to give him a cheap draw, and I thought he might pay off a bigger size bet if he has a queen in his hand. He does not and ends up folding. There was a $6 straddle on this hand. A player opens next to me for the $6. I got ace king against 2 opponents with $6 in there. I raised to 35, and they both end up folding, and we win a small one. Well, similar story with this hand. I looked out at pocket 8s, open it up, and everybody folds. These games are boring. But lucky for you, I played some more on a different day. Here I have pocket 8s. Now there is a player that had a $7 straddle, and he is a little bit leaning to one side, heavier than the other. I'm sure he's going to end up squeezing this. So after 2 limpers in front of me, I decided just to limp. I expect him to put in a big squeeze play, and then I'm going to shove on him. So after 2 more players limp, he raises to $75. Everything's working out perfect. When it gets to me, I'm just going to go ahead and shove on him and get the pot. But the player to my right beats me to it. He ends up shoving for $203. I guess he was thinking the same thing I was, that this guy was going to be doing that squeeze. And now I have to determine if I want to continue. It's kind of a tough spot because I think my player to my right could be doing this a little bit lighter than normal. But, the limp re-raise is always so dangerous. I did see him make a interesting play earlier in the session. Now, I haven't played with him at all before, so he's a new player to me. But he had the opportunity to put in a squeeze play earlier, and he did not. He just flatted. So that being said, I think he has me beat at this point. Probably has a higher pocket pair. And if I'm flipping with 8s against 2 opponents, it's not that much of a flip, but I really wanted to call this one. The other player who made it 75, when he's had the opportunity to squeeze, he makes the call. He has like another $70 or $80 behind this player. And I decided to keep the camera rolling just because I love to be tortured when I see an 8 in the window. And it comes with a 7 and a 6. And of course, the turn card is a 6, and I make the full house. I still think I made the proper laydown, especially when my opponent to my right shows that he did, in fact, limp re-raise with pocket aces. Well, this is the first hand I played on this day. I was sitting in another seat, just moved to this seat and took the big blind. There was a limp and a raise to $13. Everyone else folds and it comes back around to me, and I'm going, oh, what a beautiful seat change this was. Pick up pocket kings in the big blind. I make it 45. The first limper folds out, and now it's to the player who raised to $13. He decides to put in the money, and we're going to go see a flop heads up. Well, the flop comes out kind of good and kind of bad. It comes out with a bunch of small cards. Unfortunately, they're all of one suit, 6, 4, 3, all clubs. Now, I know I have a black king. I wasn't quite sure whether it was a club or a spade. It happens to be a spade. I decided to check this one, and he quickly checks it back. Turn is the 3 of spades. That's really good for my hand and probably not good for his. I decided to bet $75. Kind of want to build the pot so I can get all his chips in on the river if a blank hits. Just hoping that no club comes on the river. Well, the river card is a queen. Looks safe to me. I'm going to get my chips in and I'll let you hear how it turned out. Ollie. Congratulations, straight flush. High hand for this man.
You never hit straight flush.
Well, you couldn't see it on the camera, but I gave him a little fist bump and congratulated him for his straight flush. A lot of people get angry in these situations where they get a big hand beat. It's just poker, right? You just congratulate your opponent. He opened for a raise with 5 deuce. He called a raise with 5 deuce. He flops the monster, of course, and he gets paid off in full. I'm sure he's a pretty happy camper right now. And who knows, he'll probably be opening and raising with 5 deuce more often now. That's what you kind of want in your opponent. Anyway, we're off to the next hand. So I reloaded some chips. It's been about an hour and nothing's been happening good for me. I got pocket 3s in middle position, decided to raise to 15. I get a couple callers and we're going to go 4 ways to a flop. It comes 10-8-3 with 2 spades and of course a 3 of clubs. So I got bottom set. It's a kind of a wet board. I bet 25. I kind of think I should have bet more because the board was so wet. First 2 player folds and then the player in the small blind calls. Turn card is probably the worst one I can imagine. It is a 9 of spades, so it completes all the flushes and some straights and some 2-pair type of hands. Of course, I can beat the 2 pairs. I just can't beat the other ones. My opponent leads into me for $35. Well, I got a set. I got a flush draw too. I'm going to go ahead and see the river, which is a 6 of diamonds, puts a 1-liner out there. My opponent bets 50. I'm a little tilted and I call it off. I should have just folded. And he shows queen jack for the straight. A few hands later, I pick up queen jack of diamonds in the big blind. There's a $15 raise, bunch of callers. I call. Flop comes 6-5-4 with 2 diamonds. I have the big blind. I have a flush draw. I can represent that I have something good, so I bet out for $40, hoping just to take it down now. And if I get called, well, then I can rely on making my hand with 2 overcards and a flush draw. My opponent decides to raise to $105. Yeah. Now this player could possibly have a hand like 7-8 easily. He could also have a bigger flush draw, maybe ace 5 of diamonds, who knows, king 5 of diamonds. Not a good situation. I put in the call. Turn card comes 10 of diamonds. I make the flush. Now he only has about $250 in front of him, and that's about what I have. I check it, he checks it back. I wasn't worried about not getting all the money in. I figured he would call if I jam. I jam, he snaps. I turn over the flush. He did, in fact, flop a straight with 8-7 offsuit. So far today, I've won this pot. So it feels pretty good. I'm getting closer to even. Maybe we can pick up a few more pots and put a little plus in the column. Well, we had to wait almost a complete hour before we pick up a playable hand of pocket jacks. Now, the player under the gun is a solid player who raised to $15. They've been playing fairly tight, so I'm going to give them a lot of respect. Normally, I think I would lean towards a 3-bet here, but I decided just to call and set mine. Set mining with jacks is okay. And now a player to my left who has an even tighter range than the player to my right raises to $80. Of course, everybody folds out. And when it gets back around to the opener, I'm just praying that they just shove so my fold would be so much easier. But instead, they tank for a little bit and they seem to reluctantly fold. When someone reluctantly folds, it's usually a hand like ace king or ace queen that they don't want to get involved with because the player has such a tight range on my left. I look at his stack. He only has like 270 left, not enough to set mine. I fold. He did end up telling me that he did have aces, and I believe him 100%. Well, I thought the jacks were going to lay down. Maybe I'll get rewarded with queens this time. I open for a raise to $20. Get called in 2 spots, and then the player on the button jams all in for the remaining stack, which is very short, $110. Of course, I don't really like my hand as much as you would think, because the player who jammed all in, they don't play very many hands at all. What could they have? Well, they could have aces, of course, kings, of course. Would they be doing this with jacks? Maybe. Ace king? I don't know whether they do it with ace king. Well, there's some dead money out there. I think that helps my case of making a bad play. I decided to isolate by jamming. The other 2 players pulled out, and it cost me $90 more to see if he has aces or kings. Flop comes out. 7, 6, 6. Turns a deuce. River is a 7, and he shows kings. Should have known that. Oh, I think it's time to go home. All right, that first session I had a small win, $150. The other 2 sessions I did not do well. It was kind of like the same old hands of these last 4 or 5 hands I showed you, where I have something that's pretty good and it gets pretty bad. In fact, one day I flopped 2 sets and got them both ironed out. And I also had ace king a few times, flop top pair with king kicker, and ran into bottom set twice. So it ended up costing me all my chips twice, and that kind of makes a rough day just on those particular type of hands. Anyway, I guess it could have been worse. I could have been like not being able to show you all these bad beats and my losing sessions. But thanks to Capital Casino and for all your support out there, I am back showing vlogs. So next week, I am required to show a winning vlog. At least that's according to my wife. She says we could use the extra money. So tune back in next week. It should be a good week indeed, because I always listen to my wife. Happy wife, happy life. You know the story. Anyway, until next time, I hope you run good at the tables, and we'll see you back here soon.